All right. And for the first time ever, we are live on time here to talk about all the TV we've watched in the past month because I think we skipped 2 weeks ago. So there's a lot to catch up on. And despite the fact that there's a lot to catch up on, I did still choose The Bachelor as the thumbnail. I know, boo, tomato, tomato, but we'll get into it. We'll get into it. I have a justification for my actions. But before we do that, Kate, Carey, how are you guys? And it's been a month. You have to have news for me at this point.
I'm good. I don't have a ton of news, but I do have a little bit of an update on the Bridgertons just roll out. So tomorrow we should be getting a more full-length trailer. And then I can't remember what day, but someday in May is when the first half drops.
How are we feeling about the half and half drop? Have we talked about that?
We have not. I don't know. I've seen it happen before on Netflix and liked it. They've done it several times on Witcher, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I could see where it would. I think they may be trying something new with Bridgerton. I bet they've lost a lot of viewership, and I bet they're concerned about their drop in viewership because it took so long to make this season. So I think the kind of big point of doing that, I'm sure, is to increase conversation on social media and speculation so that the second half is more anticipated, more watched. So we'll see if it pays off in the end and if it gets them enough viewership to have a fourth season.
Yeah. Just sort of like that first half is there to remind people that this show exists. And we were talking offline about the fact that we feel like there has been, even before this trailer that's going to drop tomorrow, there has been like good promo for this season. Like there's social media presence, there's interviews, there's press, there was some beautiful photos that just came out today of Nicola, and I'm sure I'm saying her name wrong, for I think it was Esquire, some magazine. Just there's some promo going around out there that I think will be helpful. There's the length of time since they last put out a season, and then there's also the fact that I don't know how well season 2 is holding up in people's minds. So we'll see about that. But I'm really, really excited, despite the presence of Colin. And I think we were seeing teases just this week about the fact that there could be a different love interest? Question mark.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm excited about it. It was one of my favorite parts about season one was they had a different love entrance
Mhm.
interest. I'm not normally a love triangle person, but we've talked about our concerns previously with this relationship that will be focused on in season three. And I do think that that is a potentially good thing to have a couple outside forces pushing them together,
Mhm.
uh, which love triangles have the potential to do or tear them apart.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be fun. Carrie, any chance we can bully you into watching Bridgerton, or is that where you draw the line?
Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It depends on like what sort of windows open up in terms of my viewing options. They've picked up a little bit recently, so we'll see if anything can be slotted in there. I'm not saying it's a no, but I'm not saying it's a yes either.
That was
Uh,
like that was a parent version of a no.
that was as most men are prone to. That was a non-committal.
Right, right,
So
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I'm I'm familiar. As a Scorpio, I can be non-committal myself too, or I don't know. That's hit or miss. Okay, so speaking of non-committal, Taylor Swift's album is dropping in, I guess, a little over a week at this point. I'm pretty excited about it, which is an understatement. Torture Poets Department, it's going to be like dark light academia themed. It's about her stupid non-committal boyfriend that she broke up with before she ended up with Travis Kelsey, or at least that's my presumption. And I can't wait for the anger and the angst and all of that. So get excited if you're not excited. It's going to be great. What else? Okay, I have a question for y'all. Did y'all
I
go
had a
down the
question for you behind that.
NCAA basketball rabbit hole, both women's and men's, or just women's, which for the first time ever had a larger viewership by a good bit for its championship than men's? Were you on that at all? Did you fall down that train? That whole whatever the metaphor is.
Oh, I have been on that roller coaster ride. For like the last 10, 15, see, I go back. So for like the last 10, probably for as long as I can remember, I've been a fan of women's college basketball going back to like the early 90s.
Okay.
But but it's certainly at a significant higher pitch now with Caitlin Clark and her fantastic play and just so many more eyeballs on the sport right now because there's just so many. The best thing is you have so many talented players, but
Mhm.
you got to have the storylines to go with it too, and they have a number of those this year. It was like the perfect storm.
Absolutely. I grew up watching NCAA basketball, but I kind of drifted away mostly because I think most of what was watched growing up, like around me, was men's, and like I'm not going to care about men. There has to be a woman involved. For example, Taylor Swift, got us all back into NFL. That's a lie. I cared about NFL before her, but I want to be one of those people that only cares about NFL because of Taylor Swift. I'm not one of those people, but I wish I was. Anyways, so with the NCAA men's and NCAA women's, I actually like filled out a bracket because it was like a thing we were doing as part of like, a organization I volunteer with, as like whatever. Anyways, filled out a bracket, cared, watched all the games, correctly picked the winner of the NCAA women's championship. My men's bracket was busted, but again, I don't care about men. The women's bracket picked the correct winner, and I had the weirdest experience watching some of these games where I'm like, I'm rooting for both sides. Like there were so many great players on both sides. When you're seeing, like, for example, the rematch between the LSU girls and Iowa, and you're seeing, these same star players face off who are friends as well in real life, but are just fabulous people. I'm like, I don't know who to root for. I want them all to win, which is like such a, grandma answer, I guess, but had a great time.
Well, if I don't have a rooting interest, I'll generally have to pick one after like the first 5 minutes. If something happens, then I'll say, you know what, I'm going to root for this team. Um, but full disclosure, I was pulling for South Carolina the entire time. Like I said, going back to like the early '90s, Dawn Staley was like one of my favorite basketball players. Um, she's like an OG, a legend, and so when she became a coach, it was like, hey, I'm going. It's like I'm not have no ties to South Carolina other than her. So that's where that came from. So yeah, I was all about it. And like where I live at, like one of the best basketball teams in the country is Duke, right?
Mm-hmm.
But their men's games are always sold out. You'll never get a ticket. But like the women's games, you could show up at the front door and walk in 5 minutes before tip off. And I would always take my daughters to the games,
Oh,
and they freaking loved it. So yeah, that was something we did for like a good long period of time. So that's sort of where that built on, and hopefully passed on.
I love that. My heart just grew 3 sizes. Yeah, I will definitely be back for women's NCAA next year. That was fantastic. May have to watch some WNBA games while we're at it, since some of these players are getting drafted. I gotta follow the storyline. So they got me down that rabbit hole. I now have a new sport to be insufferable about, and we haven't even got to the Paris Summer Olympics yet, which is when I will reach a peak insufferable form. Um, yeah, so that's really all I had going on in the last month in terms of like new things, like news. Carrie or Kate, any other news before we dive into what else we watched this week?
The only other bit of news that I have is that, like, I think it was in the last few days, Star Wars and Disney Plus announced that they're going to have a new series dropping on May the 4th called Tales of the Empire. It's a companion piece to the series that came out roughly a year ago called Tales of the Jedi, which sort of is an animated show, which sort of sheds some light on dare I say, sort of minor characters, but not so much minor characters, but just characters that didn't have an opportunity to have their stories fully fleshed and that sort of thing. And the series that's coming up on May the 4th will be focusing on, if you watched Ahsoka, one of the primary villains on that show, or antagonist, because I don't like the word villain, was Morgan Elsbeth, who is a fantastic character, and she is part of this Tales of the Empire. And then there's this character called Barriss Offee, who was sort of a contemporary antagonist, frenemy, all over the sort of place with the Clone Wars cartoon, and sort of a rival to a degree of Ahsoka. So it's sort of an opportunity to expand on the live action of what Ahsoka was and use these animated stories to sort of fill in the background a little bit of who these characters were. And Tales of the Jedi was fantastic, and I don't expect anything less with Tales of the Empire.
I'm excited about it. That may be the impetus to get me to also reinstate Disney Plus and watch a few of the other Star Wars pieces I've missed. And there was also a couple Marvel things that I haven't, like, for example, I still haven't seen Loki season 2. So maybe I'll have to go down that rabbit hole if we're entering, another late spring desert of TV shows. I'll kick us off on like the what we watched this week thing, which is what we watched this month. Just to explain and justify my thumbnail, and it has a question attached to it for you guys, where I kind of want your opinion. This has to do with Bachelor, and the two lovely ladies that you see in the back of a car there, a limo, whatever, are the finalists for some, no offense, extremely unremarkable man's attention at the end of the latest season. I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. I'm sure he has a personality. We never saw it. Just picture any like curly brown headed guy that you've ever seen in your life, and you're close enough. Okay. He's not the point. They're the point. So the girl in the red dress you see there, that's Daisy. She was presumed to be the front runner the entire season. She got the first one-on-one date. He seemed to have just like a really special connection to her. He gave her lots of attention. I mean, he split attention amongst the women. Like, they're making a show. They have to keep it plausible, whatever. But he just seemed really, really drawn to her, really seemed to open up to her. It's the edit, I suppose, but it was clear that up throughout the majority of the week, she also saw herself as the front runner. And then when it got down to final 3, Kelsey, who was, someone who received attention from him and seemed to have a great connection with him, but maybe was like a little more low key, maybe like just didn't talk as much, maybe didn't have as much length of time with him, whatever. She seemed to kind of jump ahead, and there was just this switch. I don't think it was like about sex or anything, but it was right at Fantasy Suite Week. So like maybe it was, I don't know. There was a switch right at Fantasy Suite Week where it seemed like Kelsey was absolutely the front runner. Like, you could really see it. It was like night and day. Like, previously it seemed like Daisy was the front runner. Suddenly Kelsey was the front runner. And Daisy picked up on this. She said like she saw like the way they looked at each other at that rose ceremony, and that, how they acted during like the toast. And she was like, oh, this whole time I was really confident that it was me, and I felt, right, because I made it this far, but suddenly I know it's not me. So typically the format of this show is, for the final rose, when it gets on to the final 2, there's sort of this like, it's a very like elaborately decorated podium compared to previous weeks. And the first girl comes down. You don't know what order you are, so you don't know if you're the first girl, but the first girl gets broken up with, the second girl gets proposed to. That's the format. Yes, I know, misogyny and this, that, and the other. Take it up with the people who made this like 20 years ago. It is what it is. So typically that's when you find out, like, even if you kind of know by the time you're the final 2, whether you are the one getting proposed to or not, that's how it works. Okay. Instead, since they were friends this entire time, like they really were like close and friends, Daisy went and had a conversation with Kelsey and said like, I don't think it's me. What are your thoughts? And they like talked it out between the two of them. And they decided like, Daisy is correct. It is not Daisy. It is Kelsey. They didn't fight about it. They were like at peace with it. It was like, yeah, he's reassured me in XYZ way. What did he say to you? Okay. They just put the pieces together and figured out Kelsey was the one. So for the first time ever, they, as is pictured in the thumbnail, rode together in the limo to the proposal space. Daisy went and broke up with Joey before he had a chance to break up with her. She didn't do it in a mean way. She was like, "You're wonderful, lovely, whatever, but it's not me, and that's totally okay." He asked if he could walk her out. She's like, "I can walk out myself. Like, it's totally fine." Then she went and had like a conversation with Kelsey and like reassured her and was so kind to her and said like her mother would be so proud of her, like all this kind of stuff. It's like super, super cordial. And then Kelsey went and got engaged too. So here's my question for you. People are split on whether like, oh, this was cool. This was showing like women like behaving cordially and like being friends and being a girl's girl and like working this out amongst themselves and not just like leaving it up to the guy. And some people are like, well, Daisy basically stole Kelsey's moment by like not letting Kelsey be chosen. Daisy left. How do you guys feel?
Well, first of all, I had a question, right?
Yeah,
So were
go
they
ahead.
friends before the show started, or did their friendship happen during the show?
Happened on the show. They met on the show and became friends on the show.
All right. So that all right. Well, all right. That's one thing. And as far as still in the moment, how do you still well, to your point, I guess what you said earlier, there will probably be there. Obviously, there's a segment of the audience for this show who sort of looks for that sort of air of romance and fantasy and this, that, and the other, and being chosen. And I'm like, what difference does it make as long as the outcome is what you want and you've reached it in a way that everyone is cool with? I mean, that's just sort of the practical sort of response to it. But obviously, I have to assume and imagine if you're watching the show, you're watching you maybe you do want that fantasy. I'm not the person who would have been upset by that, but I'm not going to say that the people who are um, should get over it, right? That's sort of why you watch. So non-committal again.
Yeah. Kate, what do you think?
I think I'm also pretty I have a perspective of a pretty practical person, so it's hard for me to see it as a she stole the moment. But as a storytelling thing, I can argue this. If there's a main character in The Bachelor, it's The Bachelor.
Right.
And by doing this in whatever 20,000th season this is the like, ooh, we get to have the villain arc against the main character, but the villain arc is really just like we're subverting expectations. It is the opposite characters choosing something for themselves, taking their own agency. So Daisy and choosing to say, I am my own person. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know. I'm not going to walk down and do the pageantry of it all and like act like I'm oblivious to this. I'm a fully capable human being. I'm going to call this off because it's best for my feelings. It's best for his feelings. It's best for my friend's feelings. So I, I see it kind of less as a stomping on Kelsey's moment and more stomping on his moment, which is fine.
That is exactly my take. That is exactly my take. Daisy is taking a moment away from somebody, but it's not Kelsey. Kelsey was already the front runner. They figured out amongst themselves that Kelsey was the front runner. Kelsey was in love with Joey and gets engaged to Joey and all of that, and the engagement happens all the same thing. Like it's not any different. What Daisy takes away is Joey's ability to choose. She takes away his ability to like break up with her because she eliminates herself, having correctly figured out that she's not the one, and so she politely backs away, saying nothing but good things about him. By the way, she's never said anything bad about him. Nobody has anything bad to say about him because he has no personality, so there's nothing to dislike. Like it's a he could be replaced by a mannequin and no one would notice. So she takes away his like power trip of like, I choose this girl over this girl, which he's already had all season. So who cares? That's the format of the show. And instead, he has the opportunity to get engaged to the woman he actually loves, if he so chooses, which he does. But he doesn't have the opportunity to have that engagement also be this like power trip choose moment. Kelsey does not lose anything by it. Also, they're still like really good friends, and it's really sweet. In this essay, I will. Anyways, that's what I wanted to highlight from what I've watched this week. Reality romance television has been excellent, albeit disappointing in terms of like the couples that have come out of it. Married at First Sight in Colorado, Denver, Colorado, this past season. I literally pour one out for everybody in Denver, Colorado. That seems like the absolute trenches. All pairs were absolutely awful. Nobody stayed together. That looks like World War III, 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Great season, however. The Good Doctor, little shout out to them. They have all of my ships together, and for the final season, we're getting to see them like play out and work out. You know, it's like a denouement of the relationship, and I just appreciate them not doing the like cringy 2012 thing of like trying to wait for the series finale to finally get the ship together, because that makes me want to blow my brains out. So shout out The Good Doctor. I know they got memeified and dragged on social media in the last like year or so for all of the like quirky stuff they've had in there. I stand behind all of it. It's great. Y'all hate Joy. I don't. I'm having a great time this last season. I will toss the microphone to Carey.
I've been watching two things in particular. One of them I'll talk about here. X-Men '97, the continuation of the fantastic X-Men, the animated series from the early to mid '90s. Right in sort of my like graduating high school wheelhouse. 'Cause I don't need to know how old you two might have been in the early '90s because I feel bad enough already. Um, but it's one of the things that I really, really, really like about it's like when you revisit something from, I mean, it's not from my childhood, obviously I was well into my teens, but when you revisit something from such a long time ago, you wonder if you're going to suffer from like wearing nostalgia glasses the entire time or getting a bunch of member berries and that sort of thing. And but it's fine when it's something that you really like, and it's being produced and done by folks who care incredibly much about the product and about the show, and you can tell it and you can feel it, right? But what they have not become is that they have not become total slaves to the original product, right? So it's a combination of, hey, you remember this happening and you remember that, but it also offers plenty of new and exciting things to continue the story. So it's a great combination of all those things. Um, Without spoiling anything, the most recent episode I will warn you is that you will probably, I think it's episode 5. I think you're up to now. You will not want to watch it if you have to, like, you don't want to watch it on your lunch break at work. I can guarantee you that. Um, because yeah, there's some pretty significant beats that happen in the most recent episode that'll you'll probably want to sit on the couch for a little bit and probably talk to some people who matter to you. Um,
Gotcha.
but yeah, but it's just been. I mean, they brought back as many of the voice actors as they could, which is really nice. One of the fun things about it is, even though some of the voice actors that they brought back, I mean, this show came out in like '92 and ended in what, '94, '95 or whatever. So even when you bring those people back, those people have aged 20, 30 years, and so they sound different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the spirit is still the same. Um, and so it's been a fantastic ride. Um, and the really good thing is that I think right out of the box they've seen how well it's been received, and they've already greenlit, I believe, seasons 2 and seasons 3. So that's really really freaking cool to see and to hear. Um, but yeah, that's sort of what has captured my attention the most, and I think I may have included in the doc. But I wanted to ask you two, if we have time,
Yeah.
is there a show that sort of you, whether it's a show you grew up on or whether it's a show that you have pretty strong feelings about that sort of got canceled is not the right word, but obviously it's no longer on the air. But what show is that you would like to see sort of get an opportunity to continue where they left off? And do you think that time going by would sort of diminish your ability to enjoy it?
That's a great question. I did see
Hmm.
it in the doc, and I will say I had a hard time picking an answer because maybe it's because I'm old, but every single show I could think of any genre that I really like cared about when I was young has already been rebooted. 24 rebooted. Prison Break had a movie come after it. Even some of these like less, whatever, like the Canadian version of the Anne of Green Gables, like that mini series. We got Anne with an E, and we've had other, um, Anne of Green Gables things rebooted. Narnia is getting rebooted, like any, whether you're talking true childhood, like the Anne of Green Gables, Narnia, like that kind of stuff, whether you're talking like stuff I watched in like maybe like middle school, high school, like the 24, the Prison Break, when we're like, we're cool, we're watching action shows, like all of that already got rebooted. My pick would still be 24, even though it did get a like single season kind of reboot later on, just because I think the format of it actually is very interesting and can be remade and probably made better in current day. That sort of real time format, episodic, really, it lends itself to the one episode per week release, so network television model. And I think that would be really, it would be really interesting. Obviously, different cast. I mean, you can pull in some of the old cast members, but you'll have, different cast, and, much to my dismay, but, wouldn't be for me. It's, I'm there for the ride, and it's there to draw new viewers, blah, blah, blah. We've heard that shtick. So that would be my pick. But because I am old and did exist in some part of the early 90s, to your previous question, a lot of my good stuff's already been rebooted. Kate, I'll pass the mic to you because you are probably a more relevant answer to that question.
Yes, yes and no. So mine, like the three that kind of came to my mind of like was Once Upon a Time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Once Upon a Time was like the first show I religiously watched, but I didn't even finish watching it. So it went downhill so drastically near the end, so I can't really claim that one.
Okay.
I was going to say Rain,
Oh, that's a good one.
because yeah, I loved that show. It got canceled in its fourth season, and so they did like a final scene to kind of show how her story would end. They could have easily taken that scene out and done more and more seasons. Um, but I mean, they did end the story. The show that I do look back on, and they didn't have any wrap up anything at all, was Victoria.
Mm,
Um, that one I very, very significantly wish that they would bring that back and do more and more seasons. That was a masterpiece show that I watched when I was in high school,
hmm.
and I loved that one.
Good deal.
Good choices. I will note, because I glanced in the chat, regarding our previous conversation on Riverdale, Stormy says, just using this as a commercial break, Stormy says, give me Pollen already. She confirms May 16th is the first half. She's not super sure she likes the split since we're only getting 6 episodes. And she's iffy on whether Benedict will be a fun character to follow just because his story is very much just like a remake of Cinderella. So it will be interesting to see how Shonda handles a remake of Cinderella in a Bridgerton universe. And as I have said ad nauseum and will continue to say, don't be, what's a non misogynistic insult I can use? Don't be a coward. Make Benedict gay.
um,
Want to really not be a coward, also make Eloise gay and go ahead and combine their seasons if you feel that way. Okay, Kate, go ahead.
I was going to kind of throw in the we had been theorizing that like this season was going to have strong storylines of one of those siblings. It's not looking that way.
Right.
The promo looks like they're going to be featuring Francesca more prominently, which is
Random.
interesting. I mean, it makes sense on the like the every season they have to debut a new girl, I guess, but it does feel kind of random.
Yeah.
Um, it's not going to be like the main storyline, but it's whatever, it's fine.
Hmm.
I do agree with you if they get the fourth season that I kind of just want them to combine Eloise and Benedict. They are siblings that are close already. They've already really hinted at both of their storylines pretty significantly.
Hmm.
Um, I I don't know if they'll actually go that way and making either of them gay. I could really see them pushing it for Benedict of at least saying he's bi and then like still ending up with whatever her name is. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I do think that well, now that I say that, n- never mind. Now that I'm thinking about that, that storyline doesn't even make any sense because of what they've changed in previous seasons. So I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. I I'm not even sure if they'll get a fourth season. So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. I think we'll have better theories once we see even just how the first half of season three plays out. So,
Yeah.
and if you heard my home security alarm going off in the background, no, you didn't. Uh, Kate, I'm tossing the microphone right back to you. Tell us what
Mhm.
you watched this week.
I watched
And
Ted Lasso.
sorry to interrupt. Feel free to follow our format of also giving us a question. Since I did that and Carrie did
Okay.
that, feel free to parallel.
Okay. I will think of one off the top of my head, but give me a minute.
Okay.
Um, so Ted Lasso, I watched that with my parents this week.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but it is definitely evident of why I don't watch a lot of comedies. Because what continually irritates me about every comedy I watch is how quickly storylines are just resolved. Things just fix themselves,
Hmm.
and no work is needed, and it drives me crazy. But it's a funny show. I did enjoy a lot of the characters. I did enjoy the character development. So that's a lot of the stuff that I do enjoy. And I would say it's a quality show. It's just, I think comedy, straight, just general comedy is not always my favorite genre of television.
Hmm.
Other than that, I didn't watch a ton of TV or movies, but I did read. And
Okay.
I have some books to pitch you. So previously you approached me
I did.
and you said, I want a fantasy and it to be a fantasy novel, but not like I don't want to have to think too hard about the setting or the world building. Just like there is magic and it's a thing.
Yeah.
And I and then you said you wanted it to feel like enemies to lovers, but without all the toxic problems.
Yep.
So I have an answer for you now.
Gimme.
Divine Rivals. It's a
Divine
two book.
Rivals is the title.
Yes, that is the first book, and the second book is Ruthless Vow. Delicious, amazing. I love it. So good. In a time period that's sort of reminiscent of World War One, World War Two, different. It's a fictional place, whatever, but it's very reminiscent of that, where they would have had war journalists kind of going off into the front lines and reporting. But
Hmm.
there is enchanted typewriters that are used between these two characters that they fall in love by talking to each other. They have a bit of a professional rivalry that only lasts for a little bit, and it's just enough to give it a little bit of flavor and a little bit of chemistry. Really throws that in there, spice, but not. I want to say spice, but then spice in book terms means something else now.
Right. Right.
That's not there. Um, and there's two books, and I really enjoy when they have a couple get together, and once they say I love you, very little internal conflict. Like they have like their squabbles or they have conversations where they disagree, but like there's no breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together. And that's one of these, like, once they say like I you are mine and I am yours, they don't really break up. They don't really have that kind of issues. They have more issues where they are magically being torn apart and are in different sides of the world, kind of having to deal with different things. And I really enjoyed it. Highly, highly recommend. I think you would like it.
Okay, Divine Rivals. I have it jotted down, not literally, but like in my head, and I'll put it in a list.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Why does it sound like Fitzsimmons fan fiction?
no, literally.
Magically separated.
Kate's face. She the tat.
I did not piece it. Okay, to be fair, there's a lot of details that would like catch me from like it's a like her middle name is Elizabeth, and like there's a like there's a villain character that almost is named Darcy, and like they have a like a he says something kind of rude and she overhears him in the first few pages, and so like you already know where my brain goes with this. I didn't see the second. Carey,
Kate, you might have a type.
yeah.
You also had
I
me at
like one
Divine
ship.
Typewriter.
Say it.
Yeah,
Divine Typewriter.
they're yes. That aspect's really really cool.
Well, it sounds fantastic. I was needing a new book on my list. I just got done reading 2 books of poetry. Crazy, I know. So I need to get back into narrative fiction. Well, thank you for letting me know what you watched this week, but thank you in particular for a recommendation. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off on the Women of the Week bit. And if you follow me on social media, first of all, I'm sorry. I've been basically inactive for the past 17 years. However, one thing you do know is that I am a very big fan of Chapel Rowan. I have been a very big fan of Chapel Rowan since before she went on tour with Olivia Rodrigo. Her album, The Rise and Fall of the Midwest Princess, and also her previous EP, School Nights, incredible, fantastic, never before seen, just like the spirit of early Lady Gaga reincarnated and made into something somehow unique and also referential to like some of the greatest of the greats. Anyways, just fantastic. Released a new song this week called Good Luck Babe. I think you can listen to it in place of therapy. I don't know. That's what the streets say. So good. Chapel Rowan's my woman of the week, and you are so welcome. I feel entirely comfortable recommending her to literally anybody, regardless of what genre of music you like. Um, 500 out of 10. Kate, I know you're a pre existing fan as well.
Yeah, because I was able to have jokes with you about the songs.
Correct, correct. You may be
Yeah,
entitled to financial compensation as well.
thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Carey, you're welcome. Carey, I'll let you go next. Who is your woman of the week?
Well, it goes back to the opening conversation about the women's basketball NCAA tournament. And it is Raven Johnson, who is a guard for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to last year. Imagine being on the sort of biggest stage, the biggest platform of what it is that you do, and sort of being exposed for your lack of ability at whatever it is that you're trying to do. Last year in a game, she did not have an incredible ability to shoot. And if you're familiar with basketball, some people who are on the court, you call them self check because you don't have to guard them because they don't pose a threat, right? So, quite popularly, Caitlin Clark was guarding her, and Raven Johnson was out on the perimeter, and basically, Caitlin Clark ignored her, waved her hand at her, and said, basically, self check. I don't have to waste my time and energy guarding you because you don't pose a threat. Now, that happening on the biggest stage of what it is that you do can obviously do one of two things. It could crush you, it could damage your spirit, and it could live with you for the rest of your life. Or you could use that opportunity as fuel and fire to get better. Um, which is what she did. So the following year, she basically worked her butt off in the gym. And even when people have an opportunity to get better because of a slight that they might have, they don't always get the opportunity to face the person who was the sort of progenitor of that slight, right? But she got
Mhm.
an opportunity to seek to do that this year when they got a rematch with Iowa in the national championship game. And Caitlin Clark started that game on fire, had 18 points in the first quarter. And then the coach said, Raven Johnson, you're going to guard Caitlin Clark the rest of the way. Um, Caitlin Clark only scored 12 more points the rest of the way, and South Carolina won the championship. And so I think that's an incredible redemption story. She called it her revenge tour,
Mhm.
but I think it's sort of a redemption tour. And so that is why she is my woman of the week.
It was incredible to watch Raven and the rest of the South Carolina girls play. Could not agree more. If I could pick every single, woman from all of the teams that I, saw, I would. But yeah, she was great. That game was intense, fantastic. If you hear my home alarm going off, no, you don't. Kate, you're up.
You saw me laughing about it.
It's like, is
So
it
I
loud to
actually
y'all,
have
or is it like
two people,
muffled?
and it's muffled, but I can definitely hear it, and
Okay,
I recognize it. So,
right.
um, yeah. So
Yeah.
I have two people, but it kind of circles back to the books I recommended. So I read other books than those two books. And the book right after was What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, who I didn't realize was book best friends with the writer of Divine Rivals. They are best friends. The dedications are to each other. They acknowledge that they are best friends and help edit each other's books in the acknowledgments, and I thought that was so cute, so adorable. And they were succeeding around the same time. They were published kind of like staggered, um and it was just so sweet and endearing. I loved that.
Oh, I love that. Women. Um, Great picks. Thank you for walking through your Woman of the Week with me this week. Our next live stream will be, let me check this little calendar situation. April 24th, if there's anything good that comes out between now and then. And the following one, so 2 weeks after that, will be the night before Bridgerton. Very exciting. So I will talk to y'all then. Carrie and Kate's information is in the description down below if you want to go. I usually say fight with them about any of their opinions, but I feel like there wasn't like anything super fightable this week. The only
Except for my
controversy is
Bridgerton
my home alarm
documentary.
going off 5 times during this live stream. Let me go figure out what burglars in this time. Bye.